When I came back to Canada, I started psychology here at SFU, and I did my honors degree here, and then I applied to grad school, and I applied to probably about 10 to 12 programs, and my decision was based on wanting to be in a program that was APA or CPA accredited because I was interested in clinical psychology. I had a few interviews. I wouldn't say I was a stellar applicant, and I did get one offer, and I thought about it a lot and talked to a lot of people and decided not to accept the offer. So I took another year. It's not a year off. It's a year between finishing my undergrad and applying to grad school again. And in that year, I did things to improve my application, like getting additional volunteer experience, getting a publication, going to conferences, and really doing a little more research about where was the best program for me. So I applied again, and this time I applied more widely. I applied to some schools in the States, and the choices that I made for programs were more based on the research of the person I wanted to work with. So I tried to find people who had a really good, clear research match with what I was interested in, but where they also offered the kind of training that I wanted in terms of my clinical degree. And I, again, was lucky enough to have a few interviews, and I got an offer, and I ended up going to UCLA down in the States. And one of the things that some of you might be worried about in terms of applying outside of Canada is funding. So if you do have questions about funding outside of Canada, you can certainly ask that tonight. And the other thing that I would really recommend, I think Emily suggested, like, what's a tip for grad school? And I think really, really important is if you have any interest in doing research, if it's a research-based program, then find somebody who has a good research match with you. People don't want to supervise students who aren't excited about the same kind of work they are. And so that's one of the things that I'm really looking for in a graduate student, is somebody who creates excitement and is really interesting and fun to talk to, just like Jessica. Thanks, Emily.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Becky, for that. And so now we're just going to move on to the second speaker of the night, Dr. Ryan Fitzgerald. So feel free to take it away.
Cool. All right. I am going to... All right, Emily, can you give me a nod if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Hey, success. Okay. So my name is Dr. Ryan Fitzgerald, and here I have put my academic history on the screen, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I would like to highlight a few things. So contrary to Becky, I completed all of my degrees at the same institution. And when I was applying for grad school, there were some people that said, yeah, you probably shouldn't do your grad school at the same place that you're doing your undergrad. And I didn't listen to them. But, and part of the reason was I talked to the people that I wanted to work with, and they said, look, you know, some people care about that, some people don't. And the idea is that, you know, it might be beneficial to get exposure to a new environment. But they said, if you're productive enough, it's not going to matter. So I just was as productive as I could be, and I made it out alive. The other thing I'll point out is that my first few years as a professor were in the United Kingdom. So I do have a bit of knowledge about how things are different there. So if anyone is thinking about going overseas, I can tell you a bit about how it works in the UK. And I've just come to SFU within the past year. Okay, so my talk is going to be a little bit different than Becky's, because she was more talking about you know, the process of choosing a graduate school. Mine is more focused on what it's like when you're in graduate school. And I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And before I proceed, I'm just going to warn you that my personal experience is very much in the good category, but that doesn't mean that it is all good. So I think my experience was quite good for a few reasons. So it's partly, I think, due to my personal disposition. So I like doing research, and you have to do a lot of research in grad school, so that I like that. The other thing is that I don't get stressed out too easily, and it's a stressful environment, so I was able to handle that stress. But it was also to do with my circumstances, and I think I might have been actually quite stressed out if I didn't have such good circumstances. So I had highly supportive supervisors who provided everything I needed to succeed, and I was well funded. And I don't think I would have liked it nearly as much if those factors weren't there. And I would say my experience was atypical. I would say that most people weren't enjoying it as much as me. So I'm going to tell you a bit why here now. So I'm going to start with the bad. And that's that when you're in grad school, it's a game of survival. So you're constantly working just to make it to the next stage. So not everyone who goes to grad school is going to make it through to their PhD. Not everyone who gets a PhD is going to get an academic position. And even now, I have an academic position, but I'm an untenured assistant professor, so I haven't still fully survived. I still might not make it. We'll see how it goes. So grad school is already stressful from all the work that you have to do. And if you don't like the stress of uncertainty, it's even harder. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that not everyone is dealt the same set of cards. So some people, such as myself, I was in really good circumstances. Some people have funding, other people don't. Other people are thinking, how am I going to eat while I'm doing all this work? Some people, the research works out. I think I probably got lucky with a lot of my studies. Other people don't have that luck. So a lot of the things aren't always in your control, and your relationship with your supervisor, it is in your control somewhat when you're choosing one, but you don't really know what you're going to get until you get there. And if that doesn't work out, it could get ugly. Okay, but I do want to end on a positive note and emphasize that being an academic has a lot of perks. I truly do love it, and I love grad school. So when I was in grad school, I had the freedom to work the hours that I wanted. I was very well funded, so I had scholarships all throughout my graduate studies, and I was able to travel the world. I've been to over 30 countries, and that wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for having a job where you're really supposed to go around and tell the world about what you're doing. But most of all, for me at least, it was, and I think most people should think of it as a privilege of being able to do research. That's what I think is the biggest perk. So you get paid to ask questions about the world. You're given an environment and an apparatus to test those questions, and the answers that you get could make an impact and make the world a better place. That's I think the real reason that you should think about doing grad school is because it can lead to fulfilling work, and a lot of people don't have that. Okay, so that is it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan, for that. I liked how you used the graphic. Awesome. So going on to the third speaker of the night, we have Jessica Ferreira.
Yeah, so I also made some slides because I thought it would be nice for you to have something to look at. So this is basically what my academic experience looked like from when I started university until now. Similar to Ryan, I've actually been at the same university the whole entire time, which is SFU. I've been here actually about a decade, which is a very long time. But when I first started at SFU, I wanted to become a psychiatrist, and that would mean going to medical school. However, in my first year, I realized that I had a lot of trouble with math and physics. And after doing some more research, I realized that becoming a psychologist or a counselor might be a better fit for the type of career that I actually wanted. And so I started to explore what I was interested in by volunteering as a research assistant in a few different psychology labs at SFU, actually. And the more I did that, the more I loved research, the more I wanted to get involved. And so I ended up doing an honors degree and finishing an honors thesis. And then I took a year off, similar to Becky, year off, between graduating with my bachelor's and applying to graduate school. And during that year, I worked as a lab coordinator, and that sort of helped me to get more experience doing research, applying to conferences, and getting publications prior to my application.
Thanks, Jessica. Sorry, can I quickly interrupt you? We have some comments in the chat saying to enlarge. So I was wondering if there's a way for you, maybe you want to click swap displays. It might be on your other.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was the way it was set up. Gosh, is that better for everyone? Sorry about that.
Thanks everyone for mentioning that. Thanks so much.
Thanks for telling me. So I'm going to go back to this for 2 seconds so you have a moment to kind of glance at it. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Yeah, so this is kind of what it looks like in sort of quick format. So you'll notice that it took a long time for me to figure out what I was doing and where I was going, and things changed quite a bit. Why clinical psychology? Well, I ended up choosing clinical psychology because clinical psychology programs train students to become both researchers and clinicians. And throughout my undergrad and throughout my research experiences in labs, I realized that even though we know a lot about psychology, we actually don't know that much. And there are a lot of areas that are still lacking. And in order for us to be able to contribute to helping people who have mental and physical health issues, we need to do more research, and we need to be able to apply the research to the types of treatments that we offer. And so it was really important for me, in terms of my own interest, to be able to learn how to be a good researcher and to learn how to consume research and to evaluate the research that does exist out there. And then another good reason that I thought for choosing clinical psychology at the time was that there are lots of flexible options post-graduation. So psychologists can work in a variety of different settings in hospitals and universities and private practices and medical centers, and they can do a variety of different types of work. So they can be professors in academia doing research, they can teach others in colleges and universities, they can do assessments, they can do therapy. So as a clinical psychologist, you have lots of different options, and that really appealed to me. I figured I would never get bored. What was my grad school experience like? Well, very similar to Ryan. There are lots of pros and cons. So it's been very challenging and also very rewarding. So far, as a graduate student, I found that there is a lot of stuff that you have to juggle. It kind of feels like you're constantly juggling. And in clinical psychology, we have to juggle coursework, research, clinical work, and sometimes teaching. And then, you know, that's just school stuff. So we all have personal lives and other things going on as well. So there's a lot happening. And at the same time, all of the training that I've received has been super rewarding. I've been able to do some really interesting research that I'm very passionate about. I've been able to present that research at conferences and in papers, and I've been able to use the clinical training that I've received to really help other people, I think. And that was sort of my goal with going into clinical psychology. And then I will leave you with a few quick tips in terms of if you're interested in graduate school. The first thing I would suggest is that you explore your interests. So you'll notice in my timeline that I kind of went around for a bit. I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do. And I think it's really important that you take the time to do that, because like everyone before me has said, graduate school is a pretty competitive process to apply to, and it's a long process once you get there. And so it's important to be in a program and be studying something that you really enjoy. And so I would really recommend that you do some volunteer work if you can, volunteer in research labs or crisis lines or in various sort of areas that are related to what you're interested in to kind of try it out, see if you like it. I would also recommend that you connect with professors for various reasons, because you need reference letters, because you might need some help in terms of your applications, you might need to get some experience doing independent research, like through directed studies or in honors, and for all those things, you need to have a professor to supervise you or to write you a letter. And so I would start that sort of early. And then finally, maintain good grades. I think that's just a given, but yeah.
Thanks so much. Thanks for that. I like how you use the comics. That's a nice visual. Okay, on to the fourth speaker of the night. So we have Henry Liu. Take it away, Henry.
Hi, everyone. So sorry to follow Ryan and Jessica without slides. But if I did have slides, you can kind of imagine my slides as a windy path. And then there's like a brain pick somewhere along the way. So in terms of my background, I did my undergrad here at SFU straight out of high school, but I don't think I had a straightforward path. So I started out in the Bachelor of Science Health Sciences program. And And after taking Psych 102 in my first semester and learning more about psychopathology, I decided to switch into behavioral neuroscience as I thought the brain was just so fascinating. So shout out to some of the behavioral neuroscience students here. I completed my honors degree in behavioral neuroscience a few years ago. And then I started the clinical psychology program in the fall without a gap year. So I've essentially been doing school straight for most of my life. And during the year that I conducted my honors degree or honors project, I applied to 8 clinical psychology programs across Canada. And I got an offer from 2 schools, and I ended up accepting the offer here at SFU. So I definitely wasn't one of those people, or probably maybe even some of you, who always knew that clinical psychology was the dream career path. It was something on my mind as I was thinking about future careers coming out of high school, but I also toyed with the idea of public health, medicine, and neuroscience. I just knew that there'd be more schooling in my life regardless, so I volunteered in various capacities, including in a few research labs, both on and off campus. And the reason for that was that I heard that research experience can help boost your application in a variety of programs. So I just figured it'd be helpful no matter what I wanted to do. So I started off more in the forensic psychology world, particularly with youth justice. And I really enjoyed it, but as time went on, I realized that I couldn't envision myself working within that system. So I started looking into ways that I could combine my love of the brain with being able to help patients directly, because I really valued those face-to-face interactions, but I also valued research as well. So I began volunteering in a neuropsychology lab, working on a study examining traumatic brain injuries. And that's when everything kind of clicked for me, and I did my honors degree in this lab. And I was able to see how research work and clinical work could be integrated. And like Jessica said, realizing that research is important for informing clinical practice. And that's when I knew I wanted to do clinical psychology, so I could train to become a clinical neuropsychologist, which is a subspecialization in clinical psychology that focuses on understanding brain-behavior relationships. And this realization didn't happen for me until about the end of my 4th year. So you certainly don't need to know what you want to do early on in university. In terms of my current grad school experience, I'm really enjoying my experience here as a grad student. I knew it'd be stressful at times, so that wasn't a surprise. But I can confidently say I've never done more readings in my life. And I agree with Jessica, there's a lot of juggling in clinical psychology. So currently what I'm working on is collecting data for my master's thesis. I'm taking a course in neuroanatomy. I have a client in SFU's Clinical Psychology Center, and I'm also TAing. And at the end of August, I finished my first practicum at Royal Columbian Hospital, conducting neuropsychological assessments in older adults with concerns about cognitive decline. In terms of quick tips, I clearly didn't have a straightforward path in my undergrad degree, but I knew that no matter what I wanted to do, there were things that I could do that would help boost my applications, no matter what. And one of those things was volunteering in research labs in areas that I thought was interested in, so I could kind of figure out what I wanted to kind of focus on in the future. And that's when I realized that I couldn't envision a future in forensics, so I kind of switched what I wanted to do. But I recommend volunteering in research labs if you're at all interested in grad school in psychology, as research experience is one of the main criteria that you're evaluated on for your application. And I think it's really important because it allows you to learn a lot of key research skills. So things like conducting literature reviews, analyzing data, communicating your thoughts clearly through writing, and even interacting with your supervisor. But I think these skills are more broadly applicable because they show that you're able to use critical thinking, which is generally an important attribute in life. And that's my story.
Thanks so much, Henry. And also, fun fact, me and Henry were health peers back in 2015. So
yes, that's true. We go way back.
Yeah, back in the day. So moving on to the last speaker of the night. Last but not least, we have Jason Prue. So feel free to take it away, Jason.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much to all the speakers before me, and thanks to Emily and Alan and Pearl for organizing this event. I think this is a great way to get some information, get some people to sort of discuss their experiences, and hopefully it'll help with your own applications. So yeah, I just sort of want to do a low-tech kind of discussion, a little bit of a story about my experiences. So I actually stumbled, actually one of the questions that Emily asked for us to sort of prepare was kind of what motivated us to pursue a career in psychology. And I actually didn't really have a straightforward trajectory. I kind of stumbled into psychology by happenstance. So I did my undergrad at UBC, and it all kind of started off when I just took my first intro to psych class, and I had a really engaging prof at UBC. She really got me interested and curious about psychology, so I wanted to actually take her research methods course the next year, and it sort of set everything into motion after that, because the TA for that course invited me to volunteer in his lab at UBC, which we call the Happy Lab. And I had a lot of fun collecting data and managing different projects. So I wanted to pursue that forward, and I ended up doing my honors in the Happy Lab. And at UBC, it's actually a 2-year program. And I did my honors in the Happy Lab for both years, even though it's actually kind of not recommended, because as Ryan was kind of alluding to, you kind of want to diversify your experiences. And so one of the rules for honors was to actually, for you to do your honors in 2 different labs, but I actually ended up doing it in the same lab. And it was really helpful because I was able to really dive deep into the lab's research and also better understand my own experiences, my own psychological experiences from having such a committed kind of experience. And then after I graduated UBC, I actually ended up taking a couple of gap years because one of my lab mates from the Happy Lab invited me to actually help her conduct research in the nonprofit sector. So I actually partnered with one of a local nonprofit public foundation called Charitable Impact to help, do some research with them and try to understand some of their programs and how it resonated with the community. So this was actually a really great experience because it allowed me to, develop a passion to use research as a tool to help my community, help develop my community in a way that can make a large positive impact. And that's actually why I'm at SFU right now, even though I took those couple of gap years after I graduated UBC to dive deep into some community research. I really wanted to develop the skills to help me put my best foot forward and make the best impact that I could. So I applied to do my master's, and now I'm in my PhD at SFU, working with Dr. Aknan to try to become a better community engaged researcher. Yeah, so that's sort of my experiences. And right now as a graduate student, it can be a very, very rewarding experience, and I've grown a lot, and I've learned a lot in the past 2 years. Like Ryan was sort of saying, you get the opportunity to travel and present at different conferences. You get to meet some really supportive people and really experts in the field, but it can also be a very challenging experience. And I would be lying if I said that there weren't sleepless nights or weekly existential crises that I sort of battled in my mind, saying, oh, do I belong here? Am I cut out for this kind of stuff? But in the end, if you're motivated and you're passionate and ambitious, it is really worth the struggle, and it can open a lot of doors to venture into grad school. It's helped me become a leader. It's helped me become more supportive and knowledgeable in my own research endeavors. And I think hopefully I've made a difference in my community by partnering with different nonprofits and educators in the community and beyond to investigate what it is that we can do to help enrich the community. So yeah, so that's sort of my experiences, and sort of just to touch on one of the things that both Ryan and Jessica said. Grad school can be a competitive process, but one of the key themes that I've sort of encountered through my experiences was that we also have if you have an extremely supportive community around you, it can make all the difference in the world. And I've certainly found that with my experiences at UBC and SFU, and I hope things like this, where we host workshops, can help convey that there's a lot of people who care about you and want you to do well and are here to support your learning. So being a part of that community and leveraging your network is a great way to be able to have a more positive experience. And then just I wanted to leave on with a few quick tips for if you're considering graduate school. First, I would say one of the critical things I would suggest you do is to have a real conversation with yourself and reflect and have a discussion with yourself to, you know, consider whether graduate school is right for you. It's not something that you can just take lightly. You have to be motivated. You have to persevere through the challenges. And if you're tired with school, or if you want more free time, or to start making money more right away, grad school can be slow and it can be frustrating. It can be not particularly lucrative. But again, if you're passionate and you're sure that you want to dive deep into psychology, make your career out of it, then it is certainly worthwhile. And I would definitely suggest, as I did, to take a year off and to think about it, but use that time wisely and use it to help bolster your application. So get more volunteer experience, get more research experience under your belt, and hopefully give yourself enough fodder for reference letter writers to be able to make your application stand out as much as possible with all the impressive things that you've done, and maybe even keep a list of those things as you go along. If you're working in the lab, keep a list of awesome things that you've done, and like emails of people saying your praise, and all that is great things to help your reference letter writers make your application stand out, which I think is probably one of the key pieces of the application, is just this reference, people's opinions of you and and how your network can support you in your application.